Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Artsbeat TV and radio here on Westfield's Community Programming Channel 15, 89.5 FM WSKB, and our new media partners at Agawam Media and Southwick Community Programming. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach, and today we have an hour with two people who are colleagues of mine, and we're here to celebrate the music of Steven Sondheim, the late great composer who contributed so many great pieces of musical theater, Company, Follies, A Little Night Music, Sweeney Todd. And I have with me as my guest for this hour today, the conductor Tim Stella, best known perhaps for having been the conductor of the Broadway musical hit The Phantom of the Opera for many years, and his wife, the actress Florence Lacey, who holds, I believe, an international record for playing more performances of Evita than anybody else. She starred on Broadway replacing Patti LuPone. She starred in international tours, and Florence Lacey's performance career has also included the Grand Tour, in which she starred opposite Joel Grey, many Sondheim performances, most recently the revival of Follies with Jen Maxwell and Bernadette Peters. And I've got to say, in terms of Florence Lacey, when I did my very first magazine feature for a now defunct magazine called Show Music, my first interview was with Florence Lacey. And so it's really great to have both of you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. And I mean, I think it was back in 2013, Tim, when you put together a Sondheim program for the Hartford Symphony Orchestra. And Flo, you sang Send in the Clowns from A Little Night Music and narrated that production. And I realized that one of the first shows I ever worked on professionally was Hello, Dolly, and you were Irene Malloy in that production.
That was a while ago.
That was a while ago. We were kids.
Exactly.
So we're all collaborating again when MOSSO, the musicians of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, present a Sondheim Celebration June 23rd at Springfield Symphony Hall, which Tim is directing and pulling together some artists. And Tim, tell us a little bit about what you've got planned for that program.
Well, I'm very excited because this is one of my favorite kind of orchestral programs, and the soloists are truly outstanding. I got this idea way back. I used to love to rummage in the record shop, Academy Records on 18th Street in New York, and it's used in demo CDs, and I would spend countless hours in there. And then I came across this out-of-print album called Symphonic Sondheim by one of my absolute favorite orchestrators, Don Sebesky. And I listened to this over and over, and I said, this music needs to be performed. And I called Don personally, and he said, really, it hasn't been played much. It was done by the London Symphony for the recording, but it was so terrific and really shows off the colors and the orchestral palette. So then I thought, well, let me expand it a bit by getting a few soloists of high caliber, and that's exactly what we have for this program. Lisa Vroman, Hugh Panero, their resumes are extremely impressive. And then I have a husband and wife local artists, and they're outstanding, Ray and Kate Hardman. And so that'll be my quartet, and we've got a few surprises along the way, and it should be an exciting program.
What was the first Sondheim musical that you ever saw, maybe the first one you ever did?
Gosh, I have to think. Early on in college, I was in high school. I got into music theater and starting to music direct, community theater, etc. But maybe when I was a freshman at Hart College of Music, the librarian at the Bristol Public Library kept trying to get me to listen to good recordings. So she gave me A Little Night Music because she had just seen it, and I went, whoa. When I heard that opening trio and I was following the libretto, it just opened up a whole new world. And then, of course, in rapid succession, to have Follies and Company I don't think that's ever been duplicated by anyone to have three colossal works in that short a period of time. So I was hooked.
Yeah. Company was my first one. My mother took me to see it when it was trying out in Boston. And then I went to New York on the train to see it in, a couple of years later with a different cast and all of that. But that hooked me.
Yeah.
Florence, you performed so much Sondheim in your career. I know that, you were in the most recent Broadway revival of Follies with Bernadette Peters, but also in Washington, D.C., where I go often for work. You're a frequent performer at the Signature Theater in Greater Washington, which does, I would say 90% of their stuff is Sondheim.
It's true. Well, the first Sondheim I ever saw on Broadway was Follies. So I kind of went full circle because the last show I did on Broadway was Follies. But at Signature, I did Follies. I played Sally in their production of Follies many years back. And then when this Broadway revival was happening, I got to understudy Bernadette Peters in the role of Sally. So I've had a lot of history with Follies, also with a little night music. I've done a little night music 3 times. I played Desiree a couple of times when I was a bit younger. And then the last show I did at Signature Theater was a little night music, and I played Madame Armfeldt. So I've had a nice history with those shows. And then at the Kennedy Center, I did in the Sondheim, the whole summer of Sondheim tribute. I did Sunday in the Park with George. I played Yvonne in Sunday in the Park. So I've had a wonderful history with Sondheim.
Did you get to meet him or talk with him at all, particularly during the last revival of Follies?
Yes, I got to work with Steven twice, the Broadway revival of Follies for sure. And also in Sunday in the Park with George at the Kennedy Center. He was very involved in that whole summer of Sondheim. We called it Camp Sondheim. It was like going to summer camp and doing the best music ever written.
And what was it like working with him? Was he gracious in terms of giving you the opportunity to explore the role? Was he specific about things?
Well, he was sort of both sides of the coin. He could be really wonderful to work with. But my strongest memory of working with Steven was the very first time we were on stage rehearsing the end of Act 1 of Sunday in the Park with George, which is the title song, and everyone's on stage and singing full bore and all of that. And Steven walked in just as we finished, and the orchestra went silent, and he said, "The dark cloud has arrived." And I thought, oh boy, we're in for a tough day.
Which Sondheim musicals that you've done have had the most impact on you as a performer?
Well, Sunday in the Park with George is my favorite Sondheim show. When I first saw it on Broadway, I felt like it changed my life. I don't know. It was one of those moments in the theater when you're so affected by a piece of theater that nothing will ever be the same again. I never looked at my career the same way again. It just made me feel like an artist, and getting to do that show in a magnificent production of it at the Kennedy Center just cemented that for me. So yeah, Sunday in the Park with George was very impactful to me personally.
And Tim, you've conducted Sondheim along the way. Is there a production or a performance that had the impact on you?
Well, I rate A Little Night Music still my favorite score of all time. I just, maybe that's because of my classical training and background, but I just think that is just, there's not one note I would like to see changed. So I'd put that right at the top, but there are so many. It's just, and it's great to see the accolades and respect his work is getting now after his passing. It's just fabulous. So this is a nice way to celebrate his achievements and his lifetime brilliance.
I was thinking as I was preparing the notes of, for today's program, he's had a career that started in the 50s. And right now, Company is a revival on Broadway, nominated for Tony Awards. Into
Mhm.
the Woods, which a lot of people know, had an encore revival a couple of weeks ago, and it was just announced it's moving to Broadway in a couple of weeks. Companies nominated for multiple Tony Awards. Barrington Stage Company, which is one of the major theaters up here, is doing a little night music this summer. Saratoga Opera is doing Sweeney Todd. It seems to be trite, not a day goes by around here when there's not a Sondheim performance somewhere.
Very true. That's
So,
amazing.
Tim, what are some for the MOSSO concert on June 23rd? What are some of the pieces of music we can expect to hear?
Well, I think the suite from Sweeney Todd is about a 14-minute selection, and it just is a wow for the orchestra, and it really gets to show off the symphony, and it's like a tone poem. It's right up there with a great Strauss work or something. It's fantastic, and all the characters and motifs are utilized, and it's just fabulous. And then there's outside. A suite from Into the Woods is also phenomenal, and that's probably not quite as long, maybe an 8-minute selection. That will close Act One, and I don't want to give away all the surprises, but and of course some outstanding solo performances by Hugh and Lisa that just knock your socks off. So it's going to be great. All the shows we talked about so far are very well represented in this concert.
Yeah. We should probably mention that Hugh Panero is best known, I think, for his long run in The Phantom of the Opera. And Lisa Broman was in The Phantom of the Opera.
Yes.
But both of them have done a lot of Sondheim before and all that. Florence, as an actor, when you approach Sondheim, the music is complicated. There's never a simple melody, and the lyrics are tongue twisters no matter how you go at it. What kind of challenges does doing Sondheim compare to the fact that you did Years of Evita, which was Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Years of Hello, Dolly, which is Jerry Herman? What's the challenges that you found in doing Sondheim?
Well, definitely lyrics, definitely, because I'm a real stickler for wanting every word to be understood. And sometimes the tempos of things don't exactly work with the tongue twisters Stephen would throw at us. But probably my biggest challenge was I'm Still Here. In the Broadway revival of Follies that you have spoken of, I also understudied Elaine Page as Carlotta. And I went on for her several times during our run. And singing that song, singing I'm Still Here, it's just lyrically for me, it was a big challenge, a real not so much a tongue twister as a brain twister. But yeah, that was hard to prepare.
Yeah. How often did you get to go on in Follies at Kennedy Center and Broadway?
Well, I mean, I was on every night because I played a small in the show, but I only went on 9 times as Carlotta. I never went on for Bernadette because she's of the old school. We do all our performances. So I never got to play Sally on Broadway, but I did get to play Carlotta, and it was kind of thrilling to sing that song, I'm Still Here, on a Broadway stage at a certain âge.
Yeah. I thought that I saw that revival twice, once in Washington and then once again on Broadway. I absolutely loved it. Because in my own experience, I went to see Follies on a school trip, and we weren't supposed to see Follies, but we were going to New York to see a play called Story Theater that was done by Paul Sills, and the group agent was short 4 tickets. So he said, there's a show playing across the street. The bus can park in between the 2 theaters, and it's in previews, and it's a Steven Sondheim musical called Follies. And it hadn't opened. I had no idea what I was going to see. My teacher took me, and the Mirror song in Follies and the way the set changed so mesmerized me that I wore out the album. Every time I've had a chance to see it over the years, I've gone back to see Follies. And so seeing it again in New York at an older age, when I can appreciate the follies of years gone by in my own life, but also the fact that they had these lush musicals when we were all growing up, and so many of them are sparse today. It was a thrill.
Yeah, it was of a certain era. It really was. It was a big musical. And it was like I said, it was the first show I saw on Broadway. And I just knew that's what I wanted to do with my life. I was just out of college, just had finished college. And oh my goodness, I was bowled over by that production of Follies, that original. Ooh.
Yeah. What made you decide to go into theater in the first place?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I wanted to meet guys. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and the boys' high school, of course, had all the money to do the spring musicals. So I auditioned because I wanted to meet the boys.
You ended up meeting a conductor.
It worked out. I got my piano man.
Yeah, you sure did. Have you guys worked together a lot, or just intermittently?
Oh, we started out working together a lot because we met doing Evita. And so we were touring together, and yeah, we even went to Europe together doing Evita. So yeah, that's how we.
But we've also been separated for long chunks of time too. So the answer to that is not as much as we probably would have liked to, but we have to be very grateful for the fortunate job opportunities we both have had.
And what made both of you decide to move to and live in Greater Hartford?
Well, Tim grew up near here, and our life just kind of got centered here. And I love it. I love living in Connecticut. I just love it. So
we were doing Evita at the Bushnell Theater in Hartford, and Flo and I first started dating. And one of our first dates, I took her for a little scenic drive around the area, and we came through the center of Farmington, Connecticut, and Flo just fell in love. So we knew that eventually we'd have to settle here.
I can't quite believe that particular dream came true, and I live in Farmington, Connecticut.
Yeah, but even though you live up here, or there's a arts community in Greater Hartford, but also in Western Massachusetts, so many people that live up here work in New York, work in LA, but they choose to live here. There's nothing like autumn in this part of the world.
Nothing like springtime too.
And I think with COVID, we've seen such an exodus from New York of a lot of artists, and where have they chosen to go? The New England is right up there. So
did you have to put your careers on hold during COVID? Was it a tough time for you professionally?
Well, I mean, I had kind of already made a decision to retire before that, a couple of years before that, really. I did my last show in 2018, and I knew I was kind of done. And for Tim, I kept twisting his arm, trying to get him to retire, to just give up New York, because he still has a wonderfully creative place to work in his church job here in the Hartford area. And so I kept twisting his arm, but COVID sort of forced him into giving that retirement from New York thing a tryout.
And I don't know how many people realize this, but the afternoon of March 12th, 2020, it was a Thursday afternoon. There were only two shows, I believe, that had a matinee. We had changed to Thursday matinee at Phantom, and the other was Moulin Rouge. And Moulin Rouge had to cancel because of an illness in the cast.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID. And they came to us at intermission, and we were the only show and the last show playing before the shutdown. And they said at intermission by 5 o'clock, everyone has to be gone. And the thought was, well, we'll reconvene around Easter. But I packed up my locker. I just had a feeling. So they said, it looks like you're not coming back. And I just smiled. And sure enough.
Yeah. I mean, both of you have done long runs of shows. Does it ever get tired? You did Evita for years. Did performing that show 8 times a week get old after a while? And Tim, you've conducted Phantom for I don't know how many years. Does it get old after a bit?
Well, for me, no, because I was playing probably the best role ever written for my kind of musical theater acting. It's heavily dramatic, it's big belting, wild singing, and yeah, I still felt challenged. And I was seeing the world while I was doing it. So, you know, for me, it never really got old. I cried my eyes out the day I knew it was the last performance I was going to do of Evita, because it had been such a huge part of my life. I don't know, for Tim?
23 years.
Phantom.
And actually about 10 years part-time before the 23 full-time. But I'd say the most tedium for me was the rehearsals, because I had to cover rehearsals too, because I could play the score probably at a high level. And Masquerade, which is not my favorite number, of course, was endless hours of rehearsals. So, and it's really funny that I think the story goes that Hal Prince wanted to have Masquerade cut from the show. And of course, it's the big opening of Act Two, and kind of tries to get the audience back with something very bright and lively. Anyway, Andrew, of course, said, well, no, we can't cut that because that motif is in the opening music box, with the monkey. So because of that, I guess Masquerade stayed in the score. But
yeah. Flo, you also did a long run on tour and Broadway in Hello, Dolly with Carol Channing.
Yes, I sure did. Several,
and
two Broadway.
Yeah, because I remember Hello, Dolly was my first professional production. I was working in Houston at Houston Grand Opera at the time that they decided to produce Hello, Dolly, and the tour opened in Houston, and then must have lasted at least a year on the road before it went to Broadway. And then there was another tour that came through the Bushnell maybe 20 years ago. I think it was Carol Channing's last tour, and you played in that. And if I remember right, you were you understudied her and never got a chance to go on but once.
That's right. I got to go on in San Diego because Carol was being given an honorary Tony, I don't know, for her, long career. And she had to be there on that Sunday. So I got to do the Sunday performance of Hello, Dolly, and actually play Dolly. And then I played Dolly in Paris. Again, I was the understudy. I was playing Irene Malloy, and I was the understudy. And I got to do one performance in Paris playing Dolly. So I've played Dolly Levi 2 times after all those years of touring with Dolly.
And it's very funny because one of our co-anchors here at WSKB is partnered with James Homan, who was in the chorus of Hello, Dolly early on. And James has become an author, and he's been on my program a couple of times. And we get together every so often and we tell our Hello, Dolly stories of some of the people, not only with Carol Channing, but they had a company manager named Maury Efron who used to scare me. And we used to tell backstage things. But Hello, Dolly's been a part of my life since my professional career started. We're going to take a quick break to acknowledge our underwriters here. And we had mentioned that a Sondheim Celebration is being performed by MOSSO, the musicians of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, June 23rd at Springfield Symphony Hall. And if you're interested in tickets, SpringfieldSymphonyMusicians.com. We're talking with Tim Stella, the music director and conductor, who's put together a Sondheim Celebration, and his wife, the musical theater actress, Florence Lacey. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach, and we'll return after these messages.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
It's Tuesday morning from 6 till 8. Wow, it's Tuesday with Bob Plass.
Community Radio
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach, and we're talking about Broadway and Steven Sondheim and all kinds of good stuff with Tim Stella and Florence Lacey. Tim Stella is the conductor and the producer behind Sondheim Celebration, being presented by MOSSO, the musicians of Springfield Symphony Hall, on Thursday, June 23rd. And Florence Lacey, his wife, has broken international records for being the one person that played the role of Eva Peron in Evita the most, not only on Broadway, but on national tours in Europe. She's also starred in Hello, Dolly on tours and on Broadway, and she has a lot of Sondheim music to her credit. Plus, she's done a lot of Jerry Herman. You starred opposite Joel Grey in the Grand Tour, which people can go find the original cast recording. And you did some of these Jerry Herman concerts around the country that you can also find on YouTube. I'm sure we can find you too on Tim on YouTube, but you never get to see the musicians in the pit. All these bootleg shows, and maybe the back of your head. But here we are, and the Sondheim Celebration will be taking place June 23rd. And I guess, Tim, in putting this program together, you've covered just about all of the Sondheim hits that came about over the early Sondheim. And I guess you left out some of the later Sondheim, like Roadshow and Passion and things like that. But there'd be enough for you to do a marathon if you wanted.
Oh, absolutely. You could easily make 3 concerts. But I think this represents what I feel is the golden era of Steven's writing. It's just... I just think he was at his peak in this era. Not that his later works or earlier things were not worthy of this program. It's just that I really wanted to feature the Don Sebesky body of orchestral writing here. And then we also have the great orchestrator Jonathan Tunick and also the Michael Starobin from Sunday in the Park. So I think it's beautifully rounded. And I tried to get entertainment value as well as the gorgeous melodies. And so trying to put it together, you have to think about variety of tempos and variety of textures and where to put the soloists in the program as opposed to the orchestral suite. So there's a lot of thought and planning that goes into it.
And of course, I guess people don't get the opportunity to hear music of Sondheim done by a full symphony. When you're conducting on Broadway or a Sondheim, you have a much smaller orchestra.
Absolutely, Mark. And that's one of the exciting things. I mean, from the opening get-go, when you hear the full orchestra of string basses grinding away at those ominous Sweeney Todd lines, and it's just thrilling. It's something you can't get with a pit orchestra. As beautiful as Jonathan Tunick's arrangements are, this is really, like I said earlier, it's like a tone poem for the orchestra. It's just phenomenal, and so looking forward to doing this program again.
And I think that people will be astounded at the idea of listening to the music of Steven Sondheim with a full orchestra, 60 some odd musicians, in a hall that's acoustically suited specifically for concert. I was very disappointed. A couple of weeks ago, I went to Broadway to see Funny Girl, and I think there were 14 people in the pit. And
yes,
it's a show that deserves a big orchestra. So that overture is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I found that when I cover a lot of shows at the Bushnell that are on national tour, and it's always a scaled back orchestra on the road and not the big sound that you expect to hear, except for My Fair Lady, which was at the Bushnell this spring, that seemed to have a full, big Broadway orchestra the way they used to do it. So for me, I'm looking forward most of all to hearing Sondheim's music in a big theater. And I think the lyrics, which people sometimes forget that Sondheim's lyrics are brilliant. They sound good whether you're standing up as a solo person reciting them in a mic or in a big hall.
Absolutely. You're hitting a very sensitive nerve here with me, because I actually wrote the critic of the New York Times regarding this recent the show you just mentioned with the Cut Down Orchestra. Funny Girl.
Yeah.
And he actually pointed it out in the review, and so seldom do we ever see that. And I called him and I said, congratulations for mentioning this. We have been so conditioned to like poor amplified sound and synthesizers. I did a ton of work on synthesizers. Most of my career, I was a synthesizer specialist. But I'd be the first one to say, if someone asked me to synthesize the sound of a full string section or a big band, I'd go running in the other direction. You just cannot duplicate the complexity of many musicians. You can try to act like a one-man band, but as soon as you put several people together, people forget the interaction and all those little minute differences that create richness. If you try that on a keyboard, and the more you layer, it starts to sound like an organ. There's a sameness to it, and there's no way you can duplicate all the intricacies of a great string player with the bow. There's infinite possibilities, and these things are just not, and never, in my opinion, never will be. But the audience, unfortunately, has been listening to canned samples for so long now. I'm afraid that they don't know the difference, and so that's the frightening part. That people have forgotten what a great acoustic instrument can sound like, and then they get next to a cello and a great player, and they go, "Oh my God, I didn't know that's what it sounds like." And then you put,
I agree. And I also think that the over amplification of singers in Broadway shows, and I guess there's some kind of equipment that you can use to help that sound better through amplification. But when I started working in theater, you had to sing out over an orchestra. There was no microphones, or there might be mics by the footlight. And now everybody is mic'd to the max. And the shows that I've covered, I sit in the first 10 rows, and the sound is overpowering. I went to see Evan Hansen, and I thought my eardrums were going to pop from how loud it was, and it was an intimate show. But it wasn't like going to see a Hello Dolly back in the 70s where people sang over the orchestra.
Yeah, it's a constant battle, Mark, because what we have now is the modern sound man they want total control over all the elements. So what they need to do, they try to bury the acoustic sound so that it doesn't interfere with their mix. And it's the opposite of what I'd like to see. Get the acoustic resonance, and then you can skillfully just enhance that. But that is not the trend, and especially with pop musicals influencing everything. It's a difficult area, and it's constant back and forth. I know I did a Broadway production of a Most Happy Fella, and it was a 2-piano version years ago, and it was very artistically successful and got wonderful reviews. But the sound man was trying to kill the sound of the 2 pianos, and he wanted to pick up like more of the dancing, and I lost my temper, because first of all, you're pounding away pianos, and then they put all this sound absorbing stuff, and these 2 Steinway 9-foot grands, and it felt like you were banging on cement, and it's a constant back and forth. But sound men want control, musicians want more presence. And
Florence, you performed like performing Evita. Were were you doing that without a mic, or did?
Heavens, no, never, no. Because I mean, basically, it started out as a rock musical. It kind of morphed into something else. But Evita was a large orchestra, and even when we traveled, we had quite a nice orchestra. But we were playing in Europe, especially. We were playing Stadthalles. We were playing big arenas sometimes. Had to be amplified. Had to be. But even the Hello Dolly that I did on Broadway in 1978, which was my Broadway debut, we wore microphones. They were just used differently than they're used now. They really were used to enhance rather than to, as Tim said, completely control the acoustic.
And I think the modern audience is just used to louder volume. There's you look at everybody listening on earbuds and things like that, and we're conditioned to hearing louder volumes. If you go to like an early music concert or a harpsichord concert, and our ears are just not tuned to the volume, So you have to have it in a perfect environment that resonates and does its own little amplification. But
I have a lot of young kids that work for my company, I mean, college age. And because of music education in the schools, they don't attend symphony concerts anymore as kids. Both of the guys came to MOSSO concerts with me, and they were astounded. And one of them said, "It's so soft." I said, "Well, it's not that music is that soft. It's the fact that it's not blaring in your ears."
Right.
People have forgotten.
When you perform, did you prefer the large theaters or the smaller theaters?
I really like the intimate theaters. I like a Broadway house. I like the intimacy of a smaller theater. It's just
Signature, where you've done a lot of work. That's a very small theater, right?
I'm sorry?
Signature in Washington, where you perform, that's very small.
I loved working at Signature, and that kind of intimacy is just so rewarding to the actors because we can feel the audience with us.
We're going to take a quick break to acknowledge our underwriters, and we're going to throw a little Sondheim music in before we do. So take a break, enjoy some music, and think about the Sondheim Celebration coming to Springfield Symphony Hall when MOSSO, the musicians of the Springfield Symphony, perform under the direction of Tim Stella on June 23rd. Tim Stella and Florence Lacey are my guests. Peter Coles is our chief engineer, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Noble Hospital, a brand new name for a Westfield institution which is improving the health of our community every day with quality and compassion. Noble Hospital and Bay State Health, better together.
Hi, this is Harry Rock, host of Rock on Westfield every fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Tune in for my view of this place I call home.
Community Radio 89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome to Artsbeat. Welcome back, I should say, to Artsbeat TV and Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today, and we're chatting with Tim Stella, the music director and conductor, whose Broadway credits include hits like Hello Dolly, Phantom of the Opera, flops like Legs Diamond, and a whole bunch of other music along the way. He created a Sondheim Celebration in 2013 for Hartford Symphony Orchestra. It's being recreated now for most other musicians of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, coming to Symphony Hall in Springfield, June 23rd. Tickets are available at springfieldsymphonymusicians.com. And with him is his spouse, the record-breaking Florence Lacey, who appeared in more productions on Broadway, national tours, and abroad in Evita. She also starred in the Grand Tour opposite Joel Grey on Broadway. She appeared in a variety of shows at the Signature Theater in Washington, D.C., which is one of our better regional theaters, which does a lot of music of Steven Sondheim. And I know her best from Hello, Dolly, from the Houston Grand Opera tour that went to Broadway and the subsequent Broadway revival that rolled through the Bushnell, I think in 1995 when Carol Channing was 75 years old.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know where she got the energy, but I mean, you know, as I see 70s approaching, I don't think I could do that show 8 times a week.
No, that's a hard job. Yeah, she was very disciplined. I'll say that. Carol was very disciplined about performing and lived for it. So
yeah, she did. And it was funny. I mean, after working on the show in Houston, I realized that her curtain speech was the same speech every night, except for the fact that she substituted the city that she was in. And she was disciplined. And the thing that killed me was her husband of the time was the one that would stand up in the back of the auditorium and start screaming and starting, you know, an ovation at the same time in the same show every night.
Yes.
But for me, it was just an overwhelming experience to make my quote Broadway show debut with Hello, Dolly.
We have one funny story you reminded me of. When we went to Florida, we had just come from Boston, and it was an intimate theater, I think the Colonial, and the response she was getting was phenomenal. They were just going crazy over her comedy and everything. And we go to Florida to these newer art centers, a more elderly audience. And so at the end, during her curtain speech, there was a little chuckle after one of her lines. She said, "Isn't that nice? The first laugh all evening." She was not too happy in Florida. She wasn't hearing the response. That was the problem.
Yeah, she toured her one-person show, you know, well after Hello, Dolly, and it played one of the area theaters here. It was just a matinee. And I decided to skip work and go see it. And I went backstage afterwards. I figured she's not going to know me from the 70s. And she said to me, "It's so good to see you. And, you know, how have you been? I'm so glad you came. And I remember Hello, Dolly back in so-and-so." And I don't know whether that was her stock reply to people that had worked with her in the past or whether she really meant it. But I just loved her. I mean, she was such a joy to work with, even with all the quirks and everything that came along with it. I'm sure both of you have worked with people that that are textbook cases for weird, because our whole industry is so full of them.
yes, that's true. And that's all I'll say.
Well, Carol would be at the top of the list.
Yeah. But the discipline there, I mean, and some of the others that I had an opportunity to work with in musical theater, either covering as a reporter and interviewing them, or, you know, working in my PR capacity with some of them. I mean, there are some really incredible people who are so quirky, I think is the word that you could use, but the theater world appreciates and enjoys them so much. You can really just, sky's the limit when it comes to behavior and all of that. So Tim, go through some of the songs that MOSSO's performing in the Sondheim Celebration.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that for me?
Yeah.
Yes.
What are some of the songs?
Some of the vocal selections, you'll have fantastic performances of Being Alive, Send in the Clowns, Losing My Mind, Not While I'm Around, Joanna, and let's see. And Lisa will be doing a beautiful version of Children Will Listen. So we've got fantastic. I think what will strike people in this program more than anything else, I think we think of Sondheim and, of course, the lyric genius, but his melodic sense of melody is beyond compare. I mean, you'll hear gorgeous melody after melody, and it's that's the one thing that I think people will be surprised with, how lyrical his lines are. And when you put him with a huge string section and things, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, so you've really covered the gamut of most of his shows. Is there music of Sondheim's that you would like to have put into this if we had had a 4-hour concert instead of 2?
Absolutely. It was very hard to narrow it down and make it fit in 2 hours. Absolutely, Mark. Yeah, I can't think offhand, but I mean, it's like, might have even been fun to include some West Side, but of course that's only since Steven is a lyricist only. But we wanted to really strictly show off the orchestra based on this out of print album and his, some of his colossal solos.
Yeah, Florence, when Hartford Symphony did this program, in 2013, I guess, you narrated it, and you also sang "Send in the Clowns." As you look at the retrospective of the Sondheim shows that you performed and the music that you're aware of, and you were putting together your own concert, are there any specific Sondheim songs or lyrics that you feel would need to be a part of a presentation that you did?
Well, like Tim said, I would definitely, from the lyric standpoint, want to do some West Side. West Side Story just still blows me away how gorgeous his lyrics were for that particular show and that early in Broadway history. Other shows, well, I mean, I don't, I've seen Sondheim shows, but the ones that I did are the ones that I relate to the most musically. I must say I would like to sing probably a lot of things from Sweeney Todd, and I never got to do Sweeney Todd. I would like to sing things from Into the Woods, but I never got to do Into the Woods. So yeah, I'm happy with the shows that I did of Stevens, and yeah, I've always been content with those shows.
Did either of you get to see the movie version that Steven Spielberg did of West Side?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did watch that. And the next day we went back and watched the original movie from the 1960s. We had to see the comparison. And I think both of us agree. We felt the older version, the music was more the driving force of the storytelling than in this new revival movie.
Yeah, I think the energy of all you need to do is maybe compare the first 10, 12 minutes of both versions. And I think you can feel the difference, the angular energy of the original versus, I want to say, kind of smoothened version. And there were so many choices to add things that we felt were totally unnecessary, like showing that Tony had a past, he was an ex-con, things like this, I think really didn't fit. And
we thought that was unnecessary, and it sort of ruined the innocence of their relationship, him being an ex-con. So there were things about the new movie that we really didn't care for, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of too many Sondheim musicals that have made great movie adaptations. I thought Into the Woods was pretty good. I didn't much care for Sweeney Todd. I'm still waiting for Follies to be made into a movie because they announced it when it opened on Broadway originally almost 50 years ago or 51 years ago, and it hasn't happened yet. But I think, to me, Sondheim is best experienced live in a concert hall or on the stage. I mean, it's meant to be performed and not viewed on camera.
Mark, I think you bring up a point that people don't realize how difficult it is to do a movie musical. First, you have to understand it's basically a pre-record. So I worked on the Phantom movie that came out about 12, 14 years ago, whatever it was, or longer. And it's so difficult because here the actors don't even know what the sets are going to be. They have to do a pre-record far in advance, and then you have to sync up the visual to the pre-record. Now, Les Mis movie, they tried to do something different, and they tried to do the singers live, but they had a little earpiece in there with a keyboard accompaniment, and I really felt it didn't really work because that was the reverse process of now syncing up the orchestra to the and neither approach is comparable to experiencing it live. As a musician, I loved the movie Sweeney because finally in the mix I could hear the orchestra. Typically in a movie musical, the orchestral mix is way down and the voice is so forefront. So to me, it's not a natural presentation anyway, but it's very difficult to do a movie musical.
There's nothing like music together, and that's what happens in the theater when you go to the theater to see a musical.
Yeah, I want to be a part of seeing and hearing what's happening on stage and being surrounded by an audience responding.
Absolutely.
And during the pandemic, I don't know about you all, but I ended up streaming a lot of things, whether it was musicals or going to YouTube and finding somebody had taped something while they were in a Broadway house. I got to see a lot of Broadway that I streamed. It's not the same thing.
No.
It's the live thing that makes such a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
the magic of putting people inside a black box and those live performers on stage there's nothing like it. There's no experience. Yeah.
Although I did find that the retrospective they did for Sondheim's birthday during the pandemic, I think it was his 90th birthday, I was more fascinated by like Bernadette Peters singing in her kitchen and seeing what she had on the shelves, or Laura Benanti singing in her bathroom and seeing the kind of shower curtain she had. It took on an entirely different thing for me. And I find that when I do Zoom, I'm so intrigued by people's backgrounds and what books are on their shelves and all. It completely detracts from anything they're performing.
That's how I feel too. I study the background.
Well, we only have a minute or two here. So Tim, tell us, give me a couple of songs that you're really excited about performing on the 23rd of June.
Oh boy, a couple. Well, definitely the Sweeney Todd suite is exciting. That will be the opener to the program. And I love the Sunday in the Park Act 1 finale. I just think that's one of the most beautiful pieces of his choral writing. So those are two in particular that are special in my heart. And I just look at each and every song I'm thrilled about.
And Florence, any chance we'll see you coming up accompanying Tim at the concert in the audience? Because I'll save you a great seat.
I'll be in the audience. I'll sit with you, Mark.
I've been trying for our Mark, but to no avail to take part in this program. But
well, if Florence is in the audience, that's good enough for me.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll give you a starring seat, front and center. I want to thank both of you for joining us on Artsbeat today. The conductor, Tim Stella, who is producing and conducting a Sondheim Celebration being performed by MOSSO, the musicians of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, on June 23rd at Springfield Symphony Hall. For tickets, SpringfieldSymphonyMusicians.com. And he was joined today by Florence Lacey, his wife, who has starred in more performances of Evita than anyone else, on Hello, Dolly, the Grand Tour, and Follies on Broadway and on tour. And it's been really great to connect again with both of you.
Great to see you, Mark. Thank you.
We're going to wrap this up with a little more, another snippet of Steven Sondheim's musical. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer today. If you missed it, part of today's program, or you want to watch it again or share it with friends, it's archived on YouTube and WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. Thanks to our media partners, 89.5 FM WSKB, Westfield Community Programming Channel 15, Southwick Community Programming, and Agawam Media. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. We'll catch you next Friday with another edition of Artsbeat.
in a show. Broadway, baby, learning how to sing and dance, waiting for that one big chance to be in a show. Oh, gee, I'd like to be on some marquee, all twinkling lights, a spark to pierce the dark, from Union Park to Washington Heights. Someday maybe all my dreams will be repaid. Hell, I'd even play the maid to be in a show. Say, Mr. Producer, some girls get the breaks. Just give me my cue, sir. I've got what it takes. Say, Mr. Producer, I'm talking to you, sir. I don't need a lot, only what I got, plus a tube of grease paint and a follow spot. I'm a Broadway baby, slaving at a 5 and 10, dreaming of the great day when I'll be in a show. Broadway baby, making rounds all afternoon, eating at a greasy spoon to save on my dough. Oh, at my tiny flat, there's just my cat, a bed and a chair. Still, I'll stick it till I'm on a bill all over Times Square. Someday, maybe, if I stick it long enough, I can get to strut my stuff, working for a nice man like a Ziegfeld or a Weisman in a big time Broadway show.